want an exposure to a market or an
Everything they need in one place.
Be the world's foremost authority on individuals, advisors and institutions.
Hello and welcome to Morningstar. I'm Emma Wall, and here with me today is Jermey Lang, manager of the Ardevora UK Equity Income Fund. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello there.
So what's your first stock today?
Quite like Next. We've owned it for quite a bit. We like it because it's an unusually conservatively run business, particularly as a retailer, partly because it had a sort of near-death experience some time ago, and the guy that was running it then, although he's not still running it now, his son is, and so we take the view that he's been kind of scarred by that experience, and so consequently he's unusually conservative in the way he sets up and runs that business, which is unusual for retailers. So unusually conservatively run, very shareholder friendly, but often gets wrapped up with the whole worries about what's going on with retailing generally, whereas it doesn't really behave like an ordinary retailer. So like that one.
I was going to say about Next, you've mentioned it there, but the high street continues to take a battering. I mean, it's been a little while, but it seems every 6 months somebody goes under. Why is Next immune to that?
Mainly because it's boring. It doesn't take big fashion risks. It doesn't take big financial risks. It's not kind of obsessed with growing super fast, knows its market, doesn't try and do anything fancy, and we kind of like that. And so that makes it pretty impervious to the vicissitudes of the high street. And
what's your second stock?
Second stock is TSB, which is a new bank which came out of Lloyd's. We find that we like it, and we kind of find it interesting because it's the first bank I've bought since before the financial crisis. I probably, like most sort of more experienced fund managers, had a pretty poor experience of banks. And often what happens when you have a poor experience in a certain area is that you could have a permanent scarring and you refuse to look at anything in that area. But that's the psychology surrounding TSB, and that's why it's too cheap. It's viewed with a lot of anxiety. I forced myself to have a very in-depth look at it despite my prejudices, and it's a very, very unusual bank. Incredibly low risk, massively overcapitalized, very, very conservative loan book, a very, very benign regulatory environment. Basically, the regulator wants it to succeed because it wants new banks to be in there to challenge the existing ones. So it has this incredibly benign, low risk environment for it for the next few years. Won't always be like that, but good opportunity now.
One of your equity income peers, Neil Woodford, recently or last year bought a bank after the first time in 10 years and then dropped it last month.
Yep.
He said it was because of the backdrop of extortionate fines
Yep.
in the banking industry. Is that not a concern of yours?
That's what makes TSB absolutely unique. It has zero exposure to legacy issues. It was one of the conditions of it being separated from Lloyd's, is that all those liabilities sit with Lloyd's and not with TSB. So it has absolutely zero regulatory risk.
And your third stock?
My third one is Sainsbury's, which is a recent purchase of ours. We like going into areas where there's a lot of anxiety. There's lots and lots of anxiety in UK supermarkets at the moment, quite rightly, because there's a big shift in what's going on there. With the arrival, well, not really arrival because it's been around for some time, but with the deep discounters, Lidl and Aldi, causing a lot of problems. But our view is that the problems are very much focused on businesses like Tesco's and Morrison's, who've got some structural issues down there. Sainsbury's has been through the mill for a long time because it got duffed up by Tesco's for a long period. They've finally learnt their lesson. Our view is that they're just trying to stick to their standard kind of, if you like, middle class customer base, not trying to do anything too flashy. They're kind of in more survival mode at the moment. They're not getting dragged into price wars with the deep discounters. So it's probably an okay business, but it's viewed like all the rest.
Sainsbury's, I think, had a bit of a sort of identity crisis. You mentioned there it wasn't a Tesco, but that middle class area is pretty dominated by Waitrose. Is that not a concern for you?
Well, interesting. They also had they tried to ape Waitrose as well, but the sort of subtleties of the demarcation of customers is Waitrose is, if you like, right at the top, and then there's this layer below, which is kind of mass middle class, if you like, where Sainsbury's sits, and Sainsbury's attempted to go in both directions. They attempted to kind of be out Waitrose at the same time trying to chase down and combat Tesco's and Morrison's. And I think what they've worked out is they don't need to do either, actually. That if they just go back to being not quite as good as Waitrose, but not as expensive, and a reasonably pleasant place to shop, which is a lot nicer than Tesco's, they can do perfectly well.
Stick to the knitting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
This is Emma Wall for Morningstar. Thank you for watching.